This particular machine is a low temp machine. There's two different types of machines. There's high temp machines and low temp. High temp machines, you sanitize dishes with a booster heater, which boosts the water temperature up to 180 degrees on the final rinse. The other option that you have is a low temp machine, which this one is. What you do, you sanitize dishes with a chlorine-based chemical, which is the Super 8 underneath here, the middle bucket's kind of the yellowish color product. What it does is on the final rinse, it's added on that final rinse, and it gets up to a 50 parts per million, which sanitizes your dishes at 50 parts per million. We intentionally set it at about 75 parts. We certainly don't want it to get over 100 or 200 parts per million, because at that point you're going to start smelling your glasses and stuff like that. It doesn't happen that it increases itself. If anything, the squeeze tube right here will wear down and it will decrease. Okay, so you never have to worry about once it's set that it will increase on itself. It just
you check that like once a year.
yeah, well, you should check the parts per million once every day, or once every time you use the machine. Yes. That way you know it's working properly. And as I go through, I'll show you how to check that. Anyhow, it's a dump and fill machine, so it fills its water up at the first cycle. It'll run itself through a wash cycle. You'll hear as it goes through that cycle, it'll pick up the drain, it'll dump that water out and fill with fresh water. At that time, it'll add the rinse aid and the sanitizer. The rinse aid is to help your things dry faster. The sanitizer, of course, is to get it up to that 50 parts per million that I just mentioned, to make sure that you're sanitizing all your wares. The detergent will be added in the first cycle. That, of course, is what helps do the cleaning. So when the drain picks up, it'll add water, a little over a gallon of water per cycle. It'll add these two chemicals. It'll run to the end of the cycle and it will stop. At that point, you'll notice that the light will be off. I'll run it in here through in just a minute. You pull it out, and with that drying agent, with everything working properly, you should have dry wear within 30, 45 seconds. So you just want to pull it out, leave it set aside. Maybe if it's glasses, you want to pick it up, tilt it, because they'll get a little flat spot on the top here, might collect some water, just to get that water off the glasses. Okay? So I'll go ahead and run it through a few cycles, and then we'll go through at the end of the day, or end of the shift, on cleaning the machine and putting it back together and so on and so forth. The machine itself has a master switch here in the back. Okay, you can always leave it on. It's not a big deal if you leave it on. But once in a while in cleaning the machine, it gets pulled off. So if you close the door and the machine does not run, check and see if that master switch is on. Okay? Now right now it's running low on water, or it doesn't have any water. I'm going to fill it. You fill it with this black fill button right here. You'll be able to see the water run into here. And you just fill it up to a certain point. It's about right here is a visual. You only have to fill it one time. That's when you start the machine. I intentionally am running it low on water right now just so you can hear what it sounds like. It's not running steady. That's an indication that you need more water. Just hold that button until you get to the level where you hear that steady sound. Then you know it's at the right level. Right there. That's the sound you want to hear. Okay? Okay? It's going through the wash cycle right now. It's already added this detergent. I don't know if you saw this peristaltic pump turn. It added the proper amount of detergent. Now it's going into the drain cycle. It picks that drain stem up. It's draining all the water out of the machine. The water will turn on into what is called a flush cycle right now. It's flushing all the heavy soils out of the bottom of the dish machine. Now it's going to fill up and add these two chemicals right here. Now it's going into that rinse cycle. And it just finishes out the cycle. Each cycle is only 90 seconds long. So it's a lot more convenient in your home style washer, which takes, what, 2.5 hours? You'll see a lot of foam in here right now. What that causes, all these chemicals are low foaming. The only time you'll see a lot of foam is if you get below 110 degree water. Then the blue product, which is the drying agent, foams up. It's just a characteristic of that chemical. So once your first cycle, it might be a good idea just to hold the fill button, pull that drain out, and just let it run until you get good hot water. We want to run this low temp machine at 120 to 140 degree water. So depending on what it runs today, because we haven't run it yet, we'll see what the water heater is set for. If we might need to turn the water heater temperature up. The machine itself does not have a heater in it. It relies on the water heater. It has a gauge right here on front. So after you've run it a cycle or two, or at least ran it to see how hot the water is, you can look down and see how you're doing. Right now the water's not very hot. If I've been doing it so long, if you can put your fingers in the water but you can't hold it in there for a long period of time, you're at about 120. If you can hold your fingers in there, you're well below 120. But I'll turn the water temperature up there a little bit when we're done. So this machine has a door switch. When the door is open, okay, when you close the door, it's going to start automatically. And it's going to go through its entire cycle like I mentioned before. There you see the detergent going in. It won't hurt it, it just stops that cycle. But you're going to take a shower. So if you got to do that, turn the switch off first and then open it. Okay? Otherwise, it's not, you open the doors, it's got a safety switch on it, it'll stop it. But water doesn't stop flowing right away. So you're going to get sprayed a little bit, and it's happened. So
it stops that cycle, does it restart at the same point that it
starts at right where you left off. So it will continue to go through the cycle. Right now we have you set up on we'll have a service tech will stop out every 4 weeks. Well, I call it kick the tires type service, just basically make sure all the chemicals are pumping. Make sure you got to have plenty of product. Should you ever have an issue with the dish machine quits running or something, or you need product, call one of these numbers right here and we'll get someone will call you back within 15 minutes, find out what the issue is, and then we'll work to resolve the problem for you. What will happen, they'll ask you for your name. They want to know who's calling in. So when that service tech calls back, they know who to ask for. What he'll ask you is what the problem is. Okay? He'll let you know where he is, how long it'll take to get here. He'll find out if it's an issue that needs to be taken care of today, or can it be taken care of on the next service. Okay? We want to try and avoid any extra service calls that we can, so he'll ask you a lot of questions. But if it's something that's down and it needs immediate response, we try to get it out here within 2 hours. We set you up on that route every 4 weeks. One thing to make it cost effective for us, we use $100 as a break point. If you're not spending $100 in chemical in a month, it doesn't make sense for us to send a guy out every 4 weeks. So after we go 3 or 4 months, once we see your flow, how much chemical you use, instead of coming out every 4 weeks, maybe we'll back it up to every 8 weeks. Or maybe we'll do it you call us when you need us and we come out. We'll just determine that in the next 3 or 4 months. Okay? Do we want to run some of these through here? You see some of the racks that we have is peg racks, where you run your dishes through. We have the silverware racks. There's a procedure to run silverware. First of all, the first procedure or step you want to go through is put it on a flat rack. So you put all your silverware and scatter it all out laying down. Now you don't want to get it too thick. You want to get a thin layer just to cover the bottom. You run it through that dish machine one time, then you bring it out, and that's when you put it back into this. The proper way to do it is put the handle side up. So when it's dried and it's clean, spotless, when someone's grabbing silverware out of here to put it out on the tables, you're grabbing it by the handle and you're not grabbing it by the spoon of the face of the spoon, because you're going to leave your fingerprint. So when storage, you want to make sure the handles are up. But then once you run through the flat rack, put it all in here, then you run it, put it on the rack and run it back through one more time. 2 times. 2 times. Now, if you have an issue with tarnishing silverware, if that does happen, let us know. We have a product called Special, and what it does, it detarnishes your silverware. And it's just something you just do right before you go into the machine. Okay? Once you get it out, you just pull the things out. Well, you can see there's a lot of foam involved because our water temperatures are low. So things are not going to dry spot free. If you have proper temperatures, 120 to 140 degrees, closer to 140, the better it is. You're going to get a spot free wash. So I'll get that water turned up. Let's say we're at the end of the shift or whatever, the end of whatever function you have going on, you can run your last rack of dishes through. There's a thing you clean the machine. So you shut the machine off, only so it doesn't start and stop as we open this here. Just drain the water. Just pull that stem out, leave it sit just like that. And to clean the machine, there's steps you got to go through. First of all, there's a sump screen here you pull out. Over time, you should clean this up after every function. If you don't, eventually there's going to be food fibers and stuff that'll catch up in here. I've seen in restaurants that are very dirty that when the proper cleaning procedure is not followed, this will get packed solid with food fibers. But all you do, just take this, rinse it out, should not be a big deal. If you do get food fibers in there, take a knife, butter knife or something, just kind of scrape it, that loosens it, and rinse it out, it comes out. Okay? We recommend when you clean a machine, set all the pieces out right here. We always recommend the last person to use the machine cleans the machine. The next day, when someone comes in, their first thing is to build the machine, put it all back together. You leave it this way so people know that it's been cleaned. Okay? So you pull that out, clean that machine, then this is the other thing you pull out. This catches the heavy scraps, keep it from going down the drain. You pull that out at the end of each function, dump the heavy residues in there, and of course just turn upside down and rinse down the drain with the pre-rinse.
So we have a grinder, garbage disposal here?
We do not have a garbage disposal.
So it's just going down the drain?
It's going down into the scrap trap right here.
And then that gets thrown in the trash?
Yes.
Not in the
Yes. Rather than go with a garbage disposal, we do this a lot. We just run that sink into the scrap trap. You have a garbage disposal, that's just another thing that can break down. It creates odors after things sit in there, and if there's food that gets in there, eventually it's going to start stinking. And the health department in our restaurants, they love to see that garbage disposal go away because it's more of a pain than it is good.
So as dishes come in, do we rinse them first before they go into the racks and then into the machine?
The first step I would do is have a garbage can over here and scrape the heavy stuff off. This machine is not a garbage disposal. So we want to get as much of the heavy stuff off the plate so it doesn't get into the machine. In restaurant situations especially, young kids are usually doing it, they're in a hurry and they think they can just put it here and that machine will make that heavy stuff go away. Well, what happens, it gets stuck in the wash motor, it gets stuck in the rinse arms, and it creates some other problems. And usually, if you're not cleaning the machine, not pre-rinsing your dishes good by dumping them in there, then rinse it off with this, fill your rack with dishes, and then put it in, okay? You want to try to avoid things drying on the dish. Eggs, for an example, once it dries on the dish, it's hard to get off. You run it through here, the machine struggles getting the dried egg off. The proper way, if you've got something sitting, let's say you've got a bunch of these, well, flat plates, stack of them, out here. So you imagine you have a stack of them this far. Then take this and squirt water in there, and you got water in between each one of the plates. That way, whatever on there, if you can't get to it right away, at least it's not sitting there drying. It helps it keep it moist, so when you do finally rack the dishes and then you run it through in there, they all come off fairly well.
I have a question. The water that comes dripping down when you open it, where does that go? Because it's not right over the drain.
You mean where's it draining?
Yeah.
If you follow on the back side here, there's a forward drain right there. That's where it's going.
Okay,
But it's coming, it's plumbed from the back of this back side.
Right, but then when you open that whatever you call it.
The door?
side door, water was dripping down. Is there something that's preventing it from dripping down to get on the floor?
Where was it dripping at? I guess I'm not understanding
Off
your
the
question.
door, off the door.
Yeah, it's just going in here and into the machine
And so it goes
and
down
down in
into the
there.
machine?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Now also the slope of these tables should be angled. When we installed it, they should have to where you want any water that's on the table runs back into the machine. So it all should have a slight slope to it, and you'll notice. If you have water puddling up at the end, let us know. Or just have your maintenance guy pick up at the bullets on the bottom of the legs, pick it up, make that end higher so everything runs this way. Okay? Any other questions? So the next step in cleaning, you have wash arms here. You might have to get a little closer to see here, but it's got little pins. You just turn those pins and this comes out. I think it's kind of noticed, that doesn't show a real good picture of it on here, but anyhow, you'll see it. You just pull it out, twist it, and it locks out in an open position. If you run this machine without that screen in place, remember how I said everything's going to get into the wash motor? Well, that wash motor then sends it to these arms. There's one on top and there's one on the bottom, and guess where that stuff sticks? Each one of these nozzles. You'll notice the two end ones are at a slight angle. Those are pusher nozzles, so that's what makes your arm go around. If you're washing and you notice that your wash arm is not spinning, check these two end nozzles. If they're both plugged, that thing will stay in that position all day long. Your results will not be good. How you tell, especially on glasses, when you put a rack of glasses in, if the inside of the glass is still dirty, that means that there's something wrong with the bottom wash arm because it's spraying up. Now, if the top of the outside of the glasses is dirty, that means there's something wrong with the top wash arm because it's what washes the outside of the glasses. Once every shift, check these nozzles, see if there's any watermelon seeds, lime seeds, whatever it might be. If you see something in there, take a toothpick, just poke it back through. You'll see each one of these is grooved. Just take that, line that up right there. You can take the in plug out. Okay? So you can take both in plugs out, take a toothpick, push whatever's stuck in there, rinse it out, then put your plugs back. Now, when you get them back in there, make sure you put it back on here and snug it up. They don't have to be real tight, but you want it snug because I can tell you what happens a lot. People get in a hurry, they turn these in, but they don't tighten them up, run the machine 4 or 5 times, then all of a sudden you'll see a bunch of water coming outside of the machine. You know what it is. One of these end plugs come out and water's blowing straight out. If you see that, check down here in the screen. It'll catch it because you'll find the plug in here. Just put it back in. Then you have when you're done, just put it back in place. And just push those nozzles or those little handles back. They're little, you can pull it out, turn it, just turn it back and it snaps back into place. And now it's in place and it won't leave. You have the same thing on top. You have a top washer arm, looks exactly like that one. Okay, so you're at your end of the shift, you've pulled out your screens, leave them sit there to dry. You also want to leave your doors open. You want the inside of the machine to be drying out. When the machine dries out, less likely you're going to have bacteria growing, mold growing, whatever it might be. That's the way you want to leave the machine at the end of the night. into the day or whatever. Okay? Come back in the next day. First thing you do, put the screen back in, drop that in there, put your scrap tray back in. Then, of course, you got the switch off. When you close the door and you turn the switch on, automatically it's going to turn on. So you just turn it on and then hold that fill button to fill it up to that level. Once you see where it runs steady, or after it runs a cycle and shuts itself off, you can see at what level it fills itself to, and then that way you can make a mental note of it and fill it to where it runs that steady, to where you hear that steady sound. One thing you should check at the beginning of each cycle, or each shift, you sanitize by 50 parts per million of that Super 8 product, a yellow product. This is what you check it with. It's just chlorine test strips. And if you look on there, they're all color-coded. To sanitize, you want to get a minimum of 50 parts per million. There's 100, or there's 50, 100, and 200. And what's the other one? And 10, it goes down to 10. We want to make sure a minimum of 50 parts per million. So at the end of the cycle, let it run completely to and shut itself down, and that's when you check it to see if we're at 50 parts per million. Now again, you'll see a lot of foam there. Once the temperature's at 120, 140, you'll see just a few bubbles on the top, and they dissipate. As soon as the machine shuts off, they dissipate, and you have clear water. That's the way it will be when the temperatures are correct. But what you do is you just dip that in there, and you can see it comes out. We try to run it about 75 parts, so it's in between 50 and 100 parts. So that's where we want it. These we provide at no cost, so when you run out of them, call us. We always put it right there. Of course, you can keep it wherever you want, but that's what I would recommend, is keeping it somewhere right there. Should the machine break down, should you have poor results, should you need product, call one of those numbers, okay? And that's how you get your response. One thing, make sure, I've noticed several times, I've been in the other day and it was full of water. In this morning is full of, yeah, I didn't know about it. What happens is the rust starts to settle out of the water, and you start to see a rust build up inside the machine. So when you're not going to use the machine, drain the water. We want it sitting there without any water in it.
We were kind of looking at it the other day, Lorraine and we closed the doors and started the machine, and we were just like freaked out because we didn't know. The water did not appear to be going down over there. We're like, oh my God, it's going to overflow. We didn't know what was going on, so we just kind of walked away. Raised the doors and walked away because.
Is there any other questions on that? We also left products for your 3-comp sink here. This is the stuff that you use for your 3-comp sink. You have a detergent, which is the pink pots and hands. And we got a gallon pump for each one of the products. Each pump is an ounce. So, depending on which flow you go, whether you go left to right, right to left, I would assume since your storage is over here, you're going to go left to right. This will be your your detergent sink, the left side. Your middle sink is going to be a fresh water rinse. And then, of course, your third sink is going to be the sanitizer. The sanitizer you can use to sanitize your tabletops when you clean your tabletops. If you use your little Sani buckets, I don't know if you have Sani buckets that you use.
Yes, I bought some.
You just fill it with that same product. Okay? Now that's a different sanitizer than what we're using here. This is a chlorine base, that's a quaternary ammonia base. That is this strip right here. That one you want at 200 parts per million, which is right in the middle, kind of the brownish color there. Same thing there. Fill your sink. Now when you test this, this is color temperature sensitive. You want it room temperature when you check it. So if you got real hot water and you can't hold your hand in it, it's not room temperature, and you try to check it, you're going to get a reading, but you're going to get a false reading. So when you fill that sink, you want to have both hot and cold water on. And that way you're going to get closer to room temperature. Pump in, figure out how many pumps you need to get 200 parts per million. And then every time you fill it, put in that 1 or 2 pumps, whatever it takes. Fill it up, kind of mix it up with your hand, and then check it. We want it at 200 parts per million.
So we don't need to wear gloves when we're testing that?
No. Both of the, well, everyone's skin is different.
Right.
That product does not bother my skin, but it might yours. It just affects some people's skin. If you are the unfortunate one that gets a reaction from it, all we can recommend is wear rubber gloves. Okay? But it's those 2 products there are fairly, yeah. These here, different story. You get this one on your skin, you're going to feel it, you want to get it off. What you want to do, if you do get that splashed on you, is rinse it with cold water. If you rinse it with hot water, you're activating the chemical.
Right.
So you want to use cold water, cold or cool water. The liquid sanitizer, if you ever get chlorine on your hand, bleach, you kind of know what that feeling is. It's an uncomfortable feeling. It doesn't really burn, at least it does mine, but it's uncomfortable, turns your hand white. Rinse it off with cold water. And of course the blue product there, it's pretty safe. If you could stand the taste of it, you could drink it. But I'm sure you wouldn't like the taste of it. So, you know, those 2 products, the detergent and sanitizer, they're controlled going into the machine. So you're never going to get too much to where it's toxic. If anything, like I said, these squeeze tubes go bad, you're going to end up with less. Your results are going to be bad. You're going to end up calling us, hey, we're not getting results. That means one of these squeeze tubes is probably bad. Change it out, and we're good to go. Any other questions on this? I will give you this. I don't know where you would want to keep it, unless we put it up here also. But make sure you explain to all your people that work back here, there's a difference between this test strip and that one. Because we get the call a bunch, and they say, we're not getting a test, it's not reading. We get out there, we find out they're using the wrong test strip.
So when it comes out of the sanitizer, do we, so at the art center, we're supposed to just let it dry when it comes out of the sanitizer. So we usually lay towels over here and set the dishes to drip dry kind of thing, instead of using a towel to dry them.
Yeah.
Is that a good practice? Is that helpful?
You want it to drip dry as much as you can. Depending on how hard your water is, the harder your water is, the less likely you're going to get it drying completely. And you're going to have to use something to dry it totally. That's what we use the drying agent for over here. Here we don't have that product to use. So you want to leave it in your sanitizer solution for a couple of minutes. Give it time to sanitize. That product there should not get dirty. So you should be able to fill a sink once and not drain it until the end of the function. The problems we have a lot of time in restaurant situations, they think, oh, we got to change it every so often. And that's not true. And they end up blowing through the product and they're overusing it. They're running it down the drain when they could still be using the product. Of course, the pots and pans, or pots and hands, that's normally going to be the one. When it gets too dirty, eventually you might have to change it out and refill it, get fresh water. But here in a church situation, I bet one sink's all you're going to need. It's not going to get that dirty. And then the other product we have is the neutral floor cleaner. And we went with a neutral floor cleaner because you don't want to use something high in alkalinity because it's going to damage it and dull these floors. A lot of people also think, well, I'll use bleach on a floor. They try to get away with spending any money on this. Well, what bleach does, it does exactly what it does to your clothes. It fades it out. So you'll notice that the floors, if you're using bleach, your floors are going to fade. You're going to see a white film on there. And all that white film is dirt because bleach does not clean anything. It just sanitizes, disinfects. So when you mop with bleach, all you're doing is moving that dirt around, dries back on the floor, and it shows up as a film. So I would recommend using this. Bleach is a very corrosive product. It's also a very dangerous chemical. You mix bleach with a product that it's not intended, an acid-based cleaner or something like that, you're going to get a chlorine gas. I mean, if someone gets a hard whiff of it, it's going to send them to the hospital. So the rule of thumb is don't mix anything chemical-wise.
So I was a little concerned about the floor, and I don't know if Cookie can answer this. So is it okay that this floor gets wet and in between where the little creases are, we're not gonna have the wood or whatever it is, linoleum curling up because there's water in there?
They should all be pretty well sealed with a,
So we don't have to put a rug down there, that's what I'm concerned about.
This shouldn't slip. I was concerned about slipping.
Yeah,
That this should.
if they do, you can buy those little rubber mats
with holes in it.
with holes in them.
We got one.
That way they're standing there, you don't slip and stuff like that.
Right.
Because you're going to have water that gets on the floor, of course, here.
And you're moving back
Yeah.
and forth, so you do have to pay attention.
And you can get them the length here,
Yep,
so it's all one mat.
okay.
You can roll those up, put them in here and wash it
Yeah, that's what
every
we
so
do at
often.
our center.
Yeah,
And they're huge.
yeah. The bigger they are, the harder they are to get in there, and they're heavy. So, yeah, but I would recommend using a mat like that. And it's easier on your legs as you're standing on a soft floor. That is it, yeah. Any questions? You have any billing issues, call me. I can help you get through the billing issues. If you need a service issue or a product delivered, the quickest way to get a response is there. You can call me, but sometimes I don't carry my phone in on a sales call, or on the weekends I don't carry my phone with me. So you're going to get upset with us if we don't respond quick. What you can expect when you call in, someone's going to call back in 15 minutes. If you do not get that call back, that's why it's important you leave your name and number. So when they call, they know who called in, because a lot of times that person that called in is the only one that knows what's wrong. So we're flying in the dark if we don't have the person to talk to that called in. Leave your name, your number, and if that person does, one of us does not call back within 15 minutes, call again. That means it fell through the cracks somewhere. Once you hear from someone within 15 minutes, then they can explain to you how long it'll be. They'll find out from you, is it an emergency? Do we need to get it out right away? Or can we do it on next service day? Or can we do it tomorrow? Or whatever. So that is pretty much it.
Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate your business, and call and let us know when you're out of product or need service. By putting it up, handle side up, and then running it through again. And you don't want to overstack these. I forgot to mention that. You don't want to overfill these compartments, because then you'll have spoons stuck in there like this. Well, guess what's going to happen?
Yeah.
This one here is not going to get cleaned right here. So you want to be able to put them in there, but don't get it too tight.
And I think we have 2 of these.
Uh,
Or 3 of them. Okay, there you go. So that should be easy. But it does, for silverware, you have to run things through twice, just because it's harder to clean.
Should you ever need to remove this, I forgot to point that out. You can always remove this.
What is that thing for?
That's just to keep your rack of dishes right here. So when you rinse it,
You don't have to lift.
if you did not have it, it's going to fall down in there, of course. So that's the reason why we built that and put that on there.
And you don't really want to, you want to build your tray over here and slide it, because you want any extra food that didn't get dumped off over here in the sink, not in the tray.
Yeah. Most likely, as it will go, you're going to have this machine running. This has been filled. It's already been on here, so you're going to slide a rack in, start the machine. You're going to pull this one over here, rinse it, and you're going to start, someone's going to start another one. So this one's waiting for this to get done. And in the meantime, someone should be loading another one over here, scraping all the heavy soils into the trash can.
Gotcha.
And we almost need a tray like that over at that end, so that as we're washing things and taking them out to dry, we can store them and keep going.
Well, the big things will be like the Dutch ovens and
Yeah. The flat racks would be good for the big stuff like that. And if you get, we can have one flat rack like this with larger openings for your bowls and your heavy stuff like that. If you need some, let us know. I didn't bring any out, but we can get some out.